25% of adult Americans are living with bipolar disorder, and it is a life-threatening and intense disorder. An estimated 1 in 5 people diagnosed with bipolar disorder will die from suicide. Hello, and welcome to the Heartfelt Clubhouse. I'm your host, BBC, and I am joined with an awesome guest that we have today. And this is actually a guest who reached out to the Heartfelt Club in hopes of kind of sharing their message and being on the podcast. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what made you kind of support the mission.
Yeah, so I'm 26 years old, and I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder when I was 19 or 20. So it's been about 6 years, and I've just been looking around for different mental health support groups and everything. There's people that are just, making an impact to end the stigma and just kind of doing what they can to just talk about mental health. So I found the Heartfelt Club and just kind of reached out and just to see what it was all about.
Yes, and we are so happy to have you here and really excited to, hear more about your story and share it with the world in hopes that it'll touch as many people as we can. So we are now entering March, and March is actually a month with a bunch of great initiatives for growing understanding and emotional intellect. And one of these days within this month really speaks to you on your specific topic. And that is World Bipolar Day, which is March 30th. So is this a day that you feel is really important to be aware of? And, what values does that day kind of hold for you?
Yeah, so it's just one of those days that it's just on the calendar. I wasn't really that much aware of it within the last couple of years before I saw it on social media, but it's just important to recognize people there are a bunch of different days that are there for Women's History, Black History, Women's Month, which is now, and then you have Bipolar Day, and it's just good to be a part of all the different groups that people are recognizing.
Yeah. And it's really important to spread that awareness, right? Because you said you weren't really aware that there was even that day. But it's such a great time to kind of sit down and learn, right? Because bipolar is honestly, it's one of the more stigmatized disorders that goes around, right? There's a lot of misunderstanding that goes into it. Is that something you kind of experienced?
Yeah, definitely. Before I was diagnosed and growing up and you hear the word bipolar, you just kind of just slant your eyes a little bit and say, oh, that's just how they are. They're probably going to freak out at me or, go crazy or just have these mood swings. And I really just kind of thought the same thing growing up until I was officially diagnosed. It took me a lot of years to really take it seriously, but I experienced many manic episodes, and I had to build my life from rock bottom from some of the stuff that I was getting into, and it's just there is a lot of stigma to it because you see these celebrities, not to mention any names, but some of them are good what they do. Some of them use it as a gift, and then others use it as in a different way, and it's just kind of stigmatized because some of the actions aren't really acceptable.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, at least from growing up and how I interacted with this terminology of what it means to be bipolar, how it looks, this and that, I think it was very different than what it really is, right? So when people hear that, they kind of picture really traditional cycles of okay, manic, depressive, and then you're really, really happy and all these different episodes, but it kind of blends more than that, right? It's not so.
Well, it's you don't just switch moods like detective lights. It builds up in many weeks. Hypomania, you could start to notice you're not sleeping enough, you're talking too fast, and then progressively, you if you're bipolar and you're experiencing manic episode, you'll start to engage in reckless behavior. It's not just you come in one day and you're happy and then the next day you're sad. it's more of just elevated mood cycle where, well, for me, I mainly only deal with mania. I get depressed sometimes, but mostly mania. So it's just something where it's not, like I said, when we discussed, it's not just changing moods all of a sudden. It's more of a progressive type of thing once and until you destabilize.
Yeah. And so you said you were diagnosed at 19?
Yeah, so I was prescribed like an antidepressant, and then all of a sudden I just started becoming more and more energetic, and started to had some delusions, and then I was hospitalized, and then all of a sudden I was diagnosed. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually from what I know about bipolar disorder, it's the average age for the onset of symptoms and, kind of a little bit more of the telltale signs is 25. And even from there, it can take a long time to get diagnosed, right? So,
Yeah, it's really interesting actually that people can live their teen years and not even know that they have a severe mental illness.
yeah, and what was the diagnosis process like for you? Because bipolar disorder is not necessarily like, here's a quick test and that's going to say yes or no, this is where you're at. It's a little bit more intricate than that.
Yeah, for sure. They diagnose you based on one manic episode leading into a depressive episode. When it first happened to me, I remember I got home and was like, they misdiagnosed me. What is this, And then it took me many episodes to finally come to a conclusion that yeah, I have this and I really need to take it seriously.
Yeah. And what has that kind of been like for you after the diagnosis?
Well, nobody really wants to hear that you're diagnosed with a severe illness where you're going to have to take medication every day for the rest of your life. So it was really tough, it was just like, I really didn't know what to do, but it took me many different, going down the wrong roads, too many times to really, really find out that I really need to take it what I need to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and everything you're saying, first of all, that's so impressive, right? Like you have to be disciplined in this area, and it sounds like you really are like taking it on the chin and handling it so well. So just props to you in that. And then with regard to, you're taking medication every day, and I feel like that's a little bit of also a stigma that's around bipolar disorder is from my family members who have been diagnosed, they'll feel better because they're taking the medication, and so they'll want to stop taking the medication, right?
Exactly, and that is one of the most common reasons why people will stop taking their medication is because it's working. So say you're recently diagnosed and you have to take all these pills for the rest of your life. So you take them and you're functioning well, and then all of a sudden you say, "Well, I'm doing fine. Why do I need these?" And then you have an episode because you're not taking your medication.
Yes, yes. And are there certain things that you can kind of like as you're going through these, cycles and different feelings, are you able to kind of see them coming? Is there like a trigger? How do you feel during those times?
Yeah, definitely. Well, at first, it's the hypomania when you start to feel everything coming up. It's the best feeling in the world. People have described it as, doing a stimulant drug and facing it with a shot of espresso. I don't know if I'm able to say that, but yeah, it's just like it's really well to go back on the point. It's at first you start to feel really well, so you stop taking the medication because it's such a really good feeling, and then progressively things start to fall apart.
Okay. And that's when you would potentially go into those more depressive episodes.
Yeah.
Like has being on medication been more manageable for you?
Yeah, it is more manageable. There are side effects of the mental side effects, as well as physical side effects.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel a little bit, and this is why it's been really difficult for me because I feel a little bit numbed out, maybe like a zombie, but I really do have to take it, otherwise things won't end up well for me. So that was my main battle was I and most bipolar people feel better without their medications.
Yeah, I understand. That makes sense. Who do you talk to about this kind of stuff?
Yeah, I have a counselor, therapist, a clinician, or whatever you want to call him, that I've met him. We started working together in 2019, so he was there with me before I graduated college, and then he's been there through the rough times, and he knows me really well. So we meet every 2 weeks, and we just talk about what's going on, and he always asks me like if I'm sleeping well, and just to kind of notice my changes.
Oh, so you have like a good connection with him, you feel?
Yeah, definitely. It really took me a lot of times to find somebody that I could vibe with, and just start working together. And that's one of the reasons why I really am lucky, because it is hard to find somebody that will support you and that you can get along with.
Yeah, definitely. That's one thing that's super impressive with therapy or counseling, is when you find that person that does make you feel comfortable, because then you can be really vulnerable and tell them the things that you want to tell everyone, but that's kind of not allowed in our society, right?
Yeah, that's very true.
How have your relationships kind of, developed since your diagnosis? Whether that's family, friends, romance, whatever.
Yeah, it's really difficult because when you're not well, you say things or do things that are completely out of line, and then I always apologize for what I did during those times, But sometimes if you have a relationship that's not really that strong, they don't know you that well, they'll just say, okay, well, I'm not going to talk to him anymore, and they get really hurt. And it's just really hurtful for me when I do something that I wasn't intending to do. I wasn't in the right mindset.
Yeah.
And it's just really difficult to try to balance relationships when you're really battling your own mind. So that's the most difficult part. And it makes me really sad that I've lost many friends over the years because of the stuff that I've said or did. And it's just, I have to be responsible for my own actions. It's just a little difficult because I wasn't, me.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think what you said, you're battling your own mind. I think that's such a big statement. And I think it's a really, it does epitomize a lot of what, having mental health disorders and struggling with mental health can be. Like, it's you versus your mind. And, I think a lot of your relationships, I'm sure they have to, understand that and understand where your heart is at, regardless of kind of what ends up happening or what gets done. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm thankful for my family support. They've always been there for me, through the good times and bad times. It's just, like I referred to earlier, it's just kind of hard to build relationships, romances and stuff when you're just not doing well.
Yeah. What is something that you want the audience to know about, being bipolar and being in a romantic relationship?
Yeah, so I think it's just important to have support, whether you're non-judgmental, and just know that you can make it work. I did see a pretty astounding statistic that most bipolar marriages aren't successful, but I think people with the right therapy tactics and just talking about it can make it work. It's just important to be able to talk openly about whether you're seeing changes, or if you're not sleeping, or if your behavior is erratic. It's just important to be able to support each other and know that you can make it work if you truly do love the person, and that it's just important to be there, because we definitely need that kind of support and love from a partner.
Yeah, definitely. And why do you feel that maybe bipolar disorder is a little bit more of a stigmatized, I feel like even as I'm going through and discussing mental health with so many people, I still rarely get to speak on this topic or rarely have people bring it up. So why do you feel like maybe it's a little bit less spoken about?
Yeah, it's really interesting because every time I tell somebody that I trust that I have this diagnosis, they say that, oh, well, my brother has this, or my dad had this, or I know this guy, but they don't ever talk about it. And it's just outstanding to know how many people have it. But to answer your question about why it's so stigmatized is because just some of the stuff that we're capable of is out of this world. Like I won't go into any details of some of the stuff that my mind was capable of making me do, but it's just once you're out of it, it's just looking back like, wow, that was really out of question. If I would never do that if I wasn't ill. So it's just the stigma is just because people don't like the way that somebody in an episode acts, and they really just they get offended or hurt or physically or mentally, and it's also important to note that we're not like, aggressive and stuff, and as you see in the movies or the news, it's really just that's part of the stigma is what you see the headlines of the it's really sad, but what some people have done, but
Yeah. It's a little bit of that like unknown, right? Because sometimes, first of all, like we said, it's not spoken about. So it's hard to, truly understand something if no one's speaking on it and you're not really like doing the research yourself. And then maybe a little bit of that like unknown on how an episode might develop type thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I think that's definitely really important to touch on because as a society, we should learn more and we should invest more into areas that we don't understand. One, so the stigma can be reduced, but two, so we can better provide support to people who are, living with bipolar disorder or manic depression or whatever it may be. So with that being said, what is a way that you really like to be supported?
Yeah, I just like to have people ask me, like, how you doing? It seems really simple, but I have this one friend that every time we hang out or talk online, or when we play video games, she always asks me, like, how you doing, like mentally. And it's really helpful because just throughout the day, people ask you, like, how's it going? And it's like, yeah, good. But, like, he asks me, like, how you really doing, And that's really helpful just because sometimes I don't even get that from the people closest to me.
Yeah.
But that's important, and just having friends that are there to be supportive in their activities that they plan. If I'm not doing well, they maybe not go out to the party, maybe more see a movie, you know what I mean? Just kind of being able to recognize that, but the environments that you're in affect what your mood or cycle.
Yeah. So how did you kind of start to step into your own and speak on this topic?
Yeah, so I actually was doing like a lot of TikTok videos of just kind of trends and stuff like that about bipolar disorder. I stopped doing that just because of you never know who's going to see them kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it was really fun, and I started doing it because I just really got sick of hiding it and, just kind of being who I am, because the last 7 years of my life have been revolved around this one diagnosis. And it's like, you can't just talk to somebody without explaining your last, what's going on. You know what I mean? It's just, it's like going to a social event and people ask you like what job you do. It's kind of, I like to be open about it because it's just who I am.
Yeah, completely. Well, that's awesome. And thank you so much for being open about it so we can, gain some insight and not only learn how to be a better friend to our friends who have bipolar disorder, romantic partner, whatever it may be, but hopefully we can start to educate people in hopes that they would, get a diagnosis earlier on. or not be afraid to kind of ask, like, hey, I think I'm potentially bipolar. Like, I would like to get tested. Just because, like you said, as those episodes happen, you don't know if it's gonna, you don't know the results of these episodes, and like, you wouldn't want someone to get hurt. So getting diagnosed is probably one of the best things that can happen.
Yeah, and just being serious about it, because it took me, like I said, a lot of years to really get on a regime where it worked for me. And it's just, you got to be careful if you have a family history of bipolar, or you do get diagnosed, because you never know what could happen. I almost I was in a really bad car crash like a couple years ago, and I might not be here if things were different. So
wow,
it's definitely not an easy subject to talk about, but the depressions can be so low. Like I said, I'm lucky that I haven't really been down that road as many times as the opposite, but I definitely have met plenty of people, you know, in the hospitals or wherever, that, you know, are just dealing with demons and thinking about, you know, doing that thing, and it's just really difficult.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a great area to kind of do our calls to action. So if you would like to go first, you have a call to action to our audience.
Yeah, so I would recommend people that have spare time, you know, whenever you get a chance, just YouTube bipolar disorder and just get an idea of what's going on. There's a couple of YouTube channels I recommend. Well, maybe just one. It's called Polar Warriors. He's a really good guy about who has bipolar, and a lot of people that reach out to them have a significant other, a family member, or a friend that has bipolar disorder, and he gives a lot of tips of what to say, what not to say, how to support them, and it's really helped me. So do whatever you can to do your research. If you do have bipolar disorder, there's a couple of good books that you can read. Bipolar Survival Guide, it really helped me. And just do what you can to get educated, because you never know whether you're going to run into somebody that has the illness, and it's really important to know what to do and what not to do, because it's very serious things.
Yes, thank you so much for that. I think for me, my call to action is kind of twofold. So I would recommend on the 30th of March, it is World Bipolar Disorder Day. So take the time to not only educate yourself a little bit on what it means to be bipolar, but also acknowledge all of the amazing humans who are living with bipolar disorder. Van Gogh was bipolar. We have a few other artists out there who are living with bipolar disorder right now in the public eye. So take some time to not only empathize and educate, but also realize how amazing people are with bipolar disorder, right? Like, it's not your whole personality. It's just something that you're living with.
It truly is a fascinating disorder, and I'm really, really happy to be able to talk about it. And I just think that it is really important to, like we said, get educated and stop the stigma, you know.
Yes, thank you so much for hopping into the Heartfelt Clubhouse and sharing your story with us. You never know who's going to watch these, and it's going to touch more lives than you could ever imagine. I'm going to link everything that we mentioned in the description of this episode, and we just want to remind you to go out there and be more heartfelt. Ding! As always, if you or someone you know is in crisis, to speak with someone immediately, contact the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 1-800-273-2855. That's 1-800-273-TALK. Contact Lifeline Crisis Chat, or contact the National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI, at 800-950-6264. or text NAMI, NAMI, to 741741. Thank you, and don't forget to be more heartfelt.